there's a huge amount of experience in the room, not just you know, at the table. So, and we've tried to form the questions this year around some of the things that are going on in our world, really. So, if you have insight, if you have experience, then please share it with us. Okay. We normally try to do this. Anthony, I think this is the first time Anthony sat on the panel actually, because he's normally stood up here asking the questions. So we try to get a mix really of a national service provider, clearly PHS, a smaller maybe new entrant, which is Mike's kindly agreed to do that from CNN, and then a couple of regional players in Shred Oldeside and Perry's. Thank you. Right. First question. So in August 2013, the CPNI published a paper to help local and national governments specify the correct processes and shred sizes for certain levels of sensitivity, which were then in turn changed when HMG reduced the number of classifications of confidential data to just 3. This is a dangerous question, isn't it? Because it's closed. Have you seen an impact in the marketplace as a consequence? This could be short if they all say no. I'm going to come to you first of all, Anthony. Thanks.
I think we have. I think it was a good thing to do. I think to streamline it from, I think it was 7 before down to 3 was a positive step. I think it's also created a bit of confusion because often on tenders for police or council or public sector, they specify CPNI or top secret or whatever, and they don't really know why they want it. And actually, when you drill down below the surface, probably 95% of it is just to a commercial shred size, and 5% of their total requirement might be top secret or might be de-shredded to CPNI. But I think there's quite a lot of knowledge on our side in terms of the shredding companies. I think at the customer's end, I think there's quite a lot of ignorance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Mark?
Now, not surprisingly, because me and Anthony know everything about this industry, actually, you know, and so if there's anything you want to ask, you know, one of us will know it, and normally it'll be Anthony. I think that we found the same sort of thing, you know, a lot of confusion in tenders, but you know, there has been a document that's sort of clarified some of that confusion that's come out. So we're not seeing so much in tenders anymore, but definitely some of the customers have picked up on the different shred sizes, and there's a little bit of confusion that, you know, everything needs to be dust now. So I think that just needs a little bit more clarification.
It's the DIN that confuses me.
Yeah.
Yeah, although that document doesn't actually touch on DIN, does it? But I think that the document, this one that we refer to here in August 2013, it encompassed what was classified under the old security classifications as confidential. That's what actually happened. Confidential, secret and top secret, they're the 3 highest levels. So unfortunately, that came out about 6 months before the new markings came out, where we went from 7 or whatever it was down to 3. And that CPNI document was written in such a way that confidential could just be stripped out, and it now has been. But it got into the public domain, and yeah, I think
customers have got the choice if they've previously been restricted or got confidential and that's been taken away, to be taken down into official. Some information security controllers are not happy with that, so they put it into the next category, which is maybe secret, which is way above their pay grade. It shouldn't be. But I think in the guidance, the BSIA guidance now, it's promoting the fact, with talking with CPNI and other groups, in the fact that official, Her Majesty's government departments, 90% should fall into the official category, subject obviously to a risk assessment, and that should be handled with best commercial practice. And so what we're trying to promote is BS 15713, written into an ISO quality management system, like a BSI member, is good industry practice. But it's getting that awareness out there. It's trying to give best practice out, get a message across to customers, because they're all coming back with different standards.
a lot of confusion.
A lot of confusion.
Okay. Thanks. Mike?
The only thing I was going to ask is, you know, on all of these books, the shred size that they've come up, do you think 25 mil is too large?
I do, personally.
I do too. I think it should really be set at 16. Because 25 is still there, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's an interesting point actually, because we come on to that in a minute. And there is Senelec asked us if we wanted to review 15713, and that's a good point. Just to, we talked earlier, we had a brief meeting. I was at a CPNI conference a couple of weeks ago at the BRE in Watford, and half a day was on information destruction, and I was kindly invited by the CPNI to go. not wanting to confuse things further, I heard another class evolving called sensitive official. So we've got this streamlining of top secret, secret, official, but as a word of warning, I have heard that now sort of, so possibly may become another classification. So here we go, on to that question. Senelec is the European committee which regulates the 157.3 standard, and they contacted all of the member states earlier this year to see if there is a need to review the standard. Actually, in typical European bureaucracy style, even though we said yes and none of the others bothered responding, Senelec said, well, we're not going to bother. So, but it's ongoing. Anyway, what's your view there? Do you think that 157.3 needs updating, and if so, which elements of it? Mike, you just like that, but there's one of them, obviously.
I think it's fit for purpose at the moment. I think.
Other than the shred size.
Other than the shred size, I think it outside the key requirements for a professional shredding company. My only concern really is that it's. I think the shred size is too big, because I do think having a 25mm shred is too large. I do think that if you have, we all have the accreditations that we should all have, and we'll do what it does. But for me, I think, I keep banging on about the 25, but 25mm for me is way too big. And that's, for me, I think that's the wrong bit.
These things together. Okay. Chris?
Again, with the BSIA guidance coming out, I think the existing standards is a good platform, but I think it needs to be more specific to the UK market. So it needs to have a reference on there, which I think we have put in there, the reference notes, to say that basically mobile shredding plants should have trading standards approved. The customers should be doing more due diligence on customers, making sure they get insurance, waste carriers license, permits, lots of other things which are specific to UK markets. And again, the 25mm is big, but I think there's a caveat in there saying, well, basically, if you're, say, destroying trainers, then 25mm is adequate, say, product destruction.
Yeah,
but when paper records, I think the maximum should be 16.
That's where the real issue is, isn't it?
So I think there's some guidance notes, but these need to be made aware to customers. We need to get them out and onto tenders. I think recently we've done, as we all look at tenders, and you get very miffed on the point scoring system when somebody else gets higher than you, and they've got no accreditation, they've got ISO, so it's not UCAS approved.
Yeah.
And it's getting that message out there. Yeah. And maybe you're lobbying with CPNI, CSG, ICO, and getting a joint message out there is more powerful.
Yeah, joined up message. Okay. Mark?
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with Mike. Definitely the 25mm is too large, and there's some other parts of it that are a little bit ambiguous. For instance, the training of staff. There just needs to be a little bit more depth in some of it. But I think that we're at a point where unless somebody's going to do a lot of work to say what it should be, it's not going to change in the near future.
Anthony?
I think it's probably a case of, with hindsight, be careful what you wish for. Because actually, it would have been better as a British standard, really, than an EU standard. I think we all thought it was a really good thing, moving to an EU standard, but with hindsight, it's not really. I don't think any other European country takes 15713 seriously. I think the Germans are completely anti it, because I think they are obsessed by the DIN standards and tightening those up and making those the EU standards. So we can do one of two things. We can either accept that's the way it is and just leave 15713 as it is, or we try and tighten it up in lots of areas. So all the areas that the other guys have talked about, and maybe look at things like drug testing that's not in there, maybe look at an annual inspection visit by an independent party, to really tighten it up. So I think we either accept what it is, or really tighten it up, but I don't think there's any halfway.
So we lost a bit of self-control when it was a British standard. We probably had a little bit more control over how we wanted it to see.
Yeah, I'd say we had a lot more control.
Yeah. Okay. Question for you, really, then, Darren, because it's an industry debate. If we just said, well, we don't want to EN 15713 anymore. We just want to go back to a British standard. We'll write it and we'll regulate it through BSI.
Yeah, I'm not sure you can. Well, in fact, I know you can't revert back because the European standard takes precedence. But it is an interesting point that if you have a vote almost of no confidence in the EN standard, and as you rightly alluded to, as Britain we've said, well, we want to make it more robust, the rest of Europe has sat on the backsides and haven't taken any interest. Where do we go from there? I haven't got an answer, but I have picked up on it, and I will take that back and speak with our technical director to see whether or not he can speak to BSI to see exactly what we
I think it's frustrating for all of us that we all tick the boxes, we all go out, join the memberships, we all get the ISOs, we all get the accreditations.
At some cost.
At some cost, yeah. And we all do that so our customers feel comfortable coming to us. And there's an awful lot out there that don't. And they go for the tenders and perhaps they can win them. And it's an unfair advantage, you know, not unfair advantage. It's unfair on us because we're spending all that money doing what we should be doing.
Yeah, I
And
think
there's
that's
others out there that aren't.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's a
saying it
different
should become
question,
law,
yeah.
but it's, you know, there must be a way that we can say, look, we're doing all of this. Is there another way that we can say, look, you know, we are part of this BSIA, we do everything that we should be doing, and there's others out there that aren't. Is there some way that we can actually fly the flag better?
Unfortunately, I think that's a different question. I mean, but as standards are, they're voluntary. There are some parts of the security industry that are regulated, but unfortunately at the moment, information destruction, amongst many other sectors, aren't. I think we are some way off from that as well.
So in short, our best chance of getting the British standard back is a UKIP landslide.
We're up for our policy. Yeah. We've got a second policy for it.
They'd be up for it, definitely. All right, cool. So, another one sort of revolving around compliance really. Currently our members demonstrate compliance to EN 15713 by having that standard embedded within their ISO 9001 quality management systems, which are then third-party audited by a UCAS approved body. Does that go far enough in your view? And if not, what would you support as further demonstration to compliance? And we'll start with Mark.
I think it probably does go far enough. I just all that I would like to see is a little bit more policing around those standards, just to make sure that people are compliant with them. But I don't think.
So it's like they are sufficient as long as they're in place.
Yeah, as long as they're in place properly, and you know, a little bit like Anthony said earlier, you start wishing for more, and you get a bit.
But who can police them?
Darren, we get Darren's please.
Anthony?
I think that we should have an independent inspection because, I mean, I remember lots of years ago when I first went through ISO, it included 7858 staff vetting, and the guy finished the audit on the 9000. We didn't have 15713 at the time, it was a code of practice, and I said to him, what about the staff vetting? He said, oh yeah. Can I have a look at one of your staff files then? And it was pathetic really, didn't really know what they were doing. I know obviously that was 20 years ago. So things have moved on a lot since then, a few years ago. But I just wonder whether, you know, maybe through BSIA or an independent body, if there was one person employed to go around and check every company once a year, spot check, as long as it wasn't a kind of toothless operation, that if you were non-compliant to a certain level, you know, I'm not just talking about minor non-conformance, but if to a serious level, which would obviously have to be agreed, then you would lose your BSI membership or lose whatever it might be, or fined or whatever. Yeah. I just think there's a way of demonstrating to customers that actually you're managing what you monitor.
A bit more rigorous. Yeah. Mike?
I have a question. You know, I said I might have to say, I do have a question. I'm a single site, and obviously I get audited. If you're a multiple site, do all your sites get audited, or do you just have one site?
No, every site gets audited.
Because that was one of the questions I had, because I wasn't sure. If I'm new
They get audited under our ISO policy, not by anybody else.
Right.
So they get audited by a UCAS inspector.
So every single site,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Not every year.
Not
It's
every
on,
year.
I think it's on a
3 year.
3 year.
3 year cycle.
So each site, because I get audited every year
Yeah.
for my ISO 9000. So you don't get audited every year.
Our head office gets it done every year, and then we have probably, so we have 5 sites done a year.
So you're five
Plus all the new sites as well, Andrew, come on.
Yeah.
So there's probably 5 sites a year get audited.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, this is where I'm probably going to say, it's the same for Shreddit, and obviously if I just what I'm noting, I think that if you're having it done, you should have all your sites done, rather than just ad hoc. And that's not me
Well, it's not us to choose
No,
the audit programme.
Yeah,
So.
for me, I think it should be fair that if I'm being done
Mm.
and another single site's being done, it should be that all sites should be done.
Yeah.
It's actually easier to fudge the system if you're a single site than a multiple site.
Say that again.
It's easier to fudge the system if you're a single site than a multiple site.
What?
If you're an owner manager of a shredding business, for instance, with a single site, you can actually manipulate your ISO easier than someone in the head office.
You never did that, Russ,
stuff.
did you?
Well, I've seen both sides of it, haven't I? So I
Of
think
course.
so it is easier. You know, Anthony can't ask someone to not do something in another office, or Stuart or whatever, you know, and probably the same for, I don't know who it would be, a shredder, etc.
Yeah.
But actually, as the owner of the site and you're there and the ISO is there, you can pick the right file to show him of the vetting, because you may well have one member of staff that wouldn't pass vetting or something, you know?
Yeah, I can understand what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, but
I think if it went forward with something like that, you want consistency. The customers want to see consistency.
Yeah,
If you did an independent audit, every site's audited once a year.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's probably what I'm driving at. I mean, I do understand the point you're making. One, I don't know when my audit's coming. I'd probably get a day's notice. I don't fudge the system. I'm new at it. If I do it right, I understand what
I'm
you're
not
saying.
saying you, I just give you a point.
Yeah.
I'm not even in the industry, so I'm just giving you a point.
So maybe there's a, I mean, if we had what Anthony was talking about, and that person, whoever it was actually doing unannounced visits, then it wouldn't matter, would it? I mean, there'd be more for him to shoot at, obviously,
Yeah,
yes,
that's a good
but,
point, actually. Yeah.
and is there a commercial? We did discuss this. This was an agenda item a couple of years, 18 months ago, and we talked about it, and we talked about the would, because we're all using our own individual UCAS accreditation bodies to audit us. And you know, would we ever be able to get everybody to? It'd be like herding cats, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So, what's the other alternative? We get a big hitting UCAS accreditation body to actually come in and do that as well. But that's 500 quid probably,
Yeah.
single site, maybe more. So, is there an appetite in the membership to do that, to incur and even get the cost? Or is the answer really, is there a commercial opportunity for the BSIA? Because how many sections are there? 14?
17.
17 sections. Now, I mean, they must have this debate. We can't be unique, I guess.
No, I think you are, in all
Are we?
honesty. Yeah.
There always no.
I mean, going back to what Mike was saying, I mean, if you look at a installation company, and obviously I do appreciate it's a different sector, but you look at an installation company, when they have their audits, as Anthony alluded to, what happens is they can't inspect every system that installer has installed. So they will go in and say, right, I want to look at these two systems today. The rest of the systems, you know, won't be inspected. But, yeah. So I guess what Anthony's saying is that, you know, if he doesn't know what sites they're going to inspect.
It's got to be conform.
But, and again, I appreciate we might be digressing, but there is an opportunity, if the section wishes it, to have, as do the cash and valuables in transit, they have they pay for additional services. So because it's unique to that section, it's levied across the members of that
And
section.
are those additional services delivered directly by the BSIA? In other words, do you have your own employees that carry out those audits
Yeah.
or whatever they do?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So that maybe is an area.
Yeah.
So subsidised, you know, if we were talking about subsidised audits,
Yeah.
then it might increase the appetite to do it.
Mhm.
I mean, the other point, which may be a little bit easier to achieve, which I'm sure we've agreed sometime, is to be able to get our customers to self-police us, to get ISO certificates on a website, then basically we would have to make sure that they're up to speed, which I think has been agreed
Yes.
at some point.
It was agreed ages ago, just hasn't happened yet.
But yeah, that helps with
there's an
self-policing.
upgrade of an IT system
Yeah.
that's blocking that still at the moment. Right, let's move on. I think it's a slightly different tack, maybe. Yeah. The BSIA ID section is a membership which includes all of the national service providers, most of the major regional providers, and a large section of smaller players. We estimate that our members serve more than 70% of the total outsourced market. So clearly we are doing something right as a section. Now there's probably, we haven't got really accurate research, but there's 200, 250 shredding companies in the UK. We haven't got 70% of those, but in terms of outsourced service delivery, over 70%. I think that's probably unprecedented. in the BSIA, I guess, in any other section.
And again, no, I would say that's pretty on par. I mean, what we do as an organisation is we boast that we as an organisation, our members represent about 70% of all security in terms of turnover in the UK. So I think within most sections that we start, we don't start sections if we don't believe that we can recruit the majority of the market into them. So I don't think it is unprecedented.
Yeah, anyway, the key thing on this particular question is not rested on laurels. So, what do you think the ID section should be doing to keep delivering value for money for members? Clearly, it is because it's growing. You know, 2 significant regional players just joining us. And is there anything that you'd like to see more or less of, other than me? Mark?
I think, just going back to what we were saying before, just, what do you want for your money? You just want the other members of your organisation to be as good as you think you are, and to have, and that's why I think in every meeting that we go to with the BSIA, then we bring up the fact that, has anybody been to have a look at this organisation that wants to join, and that's really all that I'd like to see from it. I'd just like to see, the guys that are coming in won't let the organisation down.
So they are properly compliant, they tick all the boxes. And to be fair, and we have moved that process on with Sharon now, she does visit and produces this audit report, so that's the
I think we've come leaps and bounds since the day we joined.
Chris?
I still think the message out there is still confusing, because we're getting, like say, DIN standards thrown at us, and CP&I standards, and councils quoting this, that and the other, and other councils not quoting any standards. It's all about price. So I still think the message for the BSIA is a reputable brand and very respected in the security industry is to reinforce the lobbying and the standards, but maybe a little bit more joined up writing with CP&I, with other national audit archives, with the ICO, maybe get a working group together and help promote the standards to the customers more, or make them better understand it.
So a consistent delivering, because there's quite a few organisations now on the periphery of our sector, aren't they? They're having an significant influence.
We've got ISO 27001 trying to write security standards. There's lots of inputs. It needs a joined up message going back to the customer.
Consistent message really being delivered for customers. Okay, cool. Anthony?
Yeah, I'd probably echo what Chris said. I think we probably need to pick our targets a bit more specifically in terms of promoting, awareness of the ID section. I think we need to, maybe partly with the ICOs, was discussed earlier on, and other bodies similar to that. So, for the BSIA to lobby every law firm is clearly not, going to happen because of resources. But actually, if you can go to the Law Society or if you can go to the Bankers Association and make a really strong representation, maybe leading with the EU legislation that's changing, put members of the committee in front of their members at their events and that type of thing. I just think we need to raise our profile. I think we've been too much about standards in the past, or the organisation has been really about standards driven, and I think we've got the standards now. There's maybe some tweaking to do with 15713, but actually what we should really now do is focus on the marketing of what we do. On a different tack, I'd also like to see new members, in fact any members, participate more. And there's a reason why people don't come to meetings, don't come to events like this and that type of thing, but they pay their money. If a company might spend £2 grand on membership, is it really just to get the stamp on the letterhead? I think the message of kind of together we're stronger. If they did participate, maybe they'd realise that actually events like this are really good for networking and good for coming up with ideas and what have you. So I don't think people necessarily appreciate the benefits of membership anyway, even the ones that are members.
Okay, that's an interesting point. Mike?
I pretty much said it all. There's a couple of things. I'm slightly different in as I have 2 businesses. Obviously, I have my confidential trading business. Also have he hates me for saying it's a waste broking business because he was going to speak to me about it earlier. I obviously do sub work out. I do subs work to him and to others. What would be beneficial, I don't know whether it would be beneficial to some of the other members, is there a diary or is there a catalogue with every member in it. There is. Can somebody tell me how I get that?
Website.
It's on the website, right, fine. Because it would be beneficial for me, because I don't want to give everything to PHS. I don't know. You know what I mean. It's about, you know, because I do other things around, so it's things like that. But I also think you're right about trying to get other members, because there are members that just want to have just the logo. Chris and I do a thing called the JVK networking thing. Actually, it's free, but if you don't go so many times in a year, then you get worn in and you get written off. I'm not saying we want to do the same to them, but I do think perhaps we ought to encourage them in a friendly way to come more, and also if they're not prepared to come, why? And try and drum it into them. They do need to come. We have to find a reason to tempt them to come. And if it does mean saying, well, look, you know, you've been a member for 5 years, you've never been to an event, why? You know, what are the reasons driving that? And if it's just to have the logo, let's find a reason to say, well, perhaps you can't have the logo. You know, and I understand.
Hard job convincing Darren of not taking their sub.
No, I know, but it is about, you know, trying to get them involved.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, one volunteer is worth more than 10 press men, that age-old thing. But you're right, and it is the same people that are involved in the working groups every year, that organise these events every year. And you know, maybe it isn't so much as a stick as a carrot. I don't know. Maybe that's the way forward to try and get people.
Give them a carrot at the end of it or something.
But can I just ask
Yes,
Darren, there was something in the rules of membership that members do have to attend at least one association meeting a year. I think it's still the case, but we just don't enforce it, do we?
You're right, that there is. So this isn't the only section that has that ruling either. But I think we mentioned earlier on already at the section meeting, which was produced at the operating board in October, that we were already predicting a loss for 2015 now. I think it would be rather foolish to start expelling members who are willing to pay subscriptions because they don't turn out. You know.
Just more encouragement.
Yeah, more encouragement, yeah.
We only have 5 minutes left. This could be the last.
Maybe a discount on your subs if you turn up.
It's encouragement.
I'll try.
Okay, Mo, we might get some views from the floor on this one. What's your view on the on-site shredding market in the UK? Is it still growing, or do you think that's off-site migrating to on-site, or new customers switching from self-served to outsourced market? What's your longer-term view on that, Anthony?
Well, obviously we've taken the strategy of offering both services to our customers nationally.
Yeah.
I think the trends we've seen kind of as we come out of recession, I think people have identified lower value spent on a list of outgoings, of which shredding will be one of them. And I think the cost of on-site shredding has come under more scrutiny in the last probably 12-18 months than it has done ever before. So we have seen some relatively large customers switch from on-site to off-site to save themselves some money. We've also seen the gap narrow. You know, traditionally there was always a 30 to 50% gap in charges between on-site and off-site, and that gap has definitely narrowed. Well, the trucks have become more expensive, so explain that one. So I think financial pressures on companies have driven them down the off-site route just because it's cheaper.
Mike, you don't operate in the on-site market, I know, but...
No, we don't operate in the on-site. It is something we have looked at recently to maybe think about going on to the on-site. We actually aren't going to go down that road. We're going to continue on the off-site. We haven't had any real stumbling blocks. We've had a couple of customers saying, well, I've got on-site at the moment. But we don't really see it's a market we really want to get into. For us, off-site works. We have the facility off-site. We cover a fairly large area. Yeah, we're travelling to London, and most of the customers are quite happy. They understand how the system works. I think you're right. I think a lot of customers, because they've had the cost constraints given to them, I think they are looking to actually save money. So they are looking to come from on-site to off-site. And we picked up a couple of contracts on that basis. Australia, perhaps, yeah.
Mark?
I think there's still a massive opportunity out there for on-site shredding. I don't think we're seeing as many one-man bands come into the marketplace as we did, but I do think there's a because
in terms of the marketplace, maybe creating some barrier to entry.
I just think there's more knowledge out there now, and you know, due to some of the bigger players like Shred, you know, over the last 10 years, putting the knowledge out there. But it's interesting to hear Anthony say that people are switching to offsite. I think maybe, you know, at different ends of the market, maybe the larger companies are looking at that. But I definitely think there's you know, there's still small companies or SMEs that are taking on-site shredding for the first time.
Good. What about you, Chris? I mean, Perry's were traditionally an off-site provider that went
on to the on-site. We've got about 3-4 trucks, but I think it comes back to the customer's needs and wants. There's lots of mixed information out there. And I think the on-site is
trending. Is it trending?
I think the trend that we're seeing definitely is the fact that there's a lot of customers that shredded in their offices. You know, customers doing their own DIY shredding that are moving away from that because of costs and operations and everything else and volumes. And vetting of staff, vetting of cleaners, all the risks associated with it, and going either to off-site or on-site. I think with economic climate, a lot have gone more to the off-site, but I still think there's a lot of misinformation out there driving customers to do on-site because of the risks and the scaremongering. So I think there's a market for both.
Okay.
But don't get me wrong, we don't want the market to change because, you know, we make massive investment in like shredding trucks, and as a lot of companies do. And so, you know, if you buy 10 new trucks a year and all of a sudden a third of that work goes off-site, you've got to buy more off-site trucks and you know, maybe even increase the size of some of your shredding facilities. And you've got, you know, very expensive commodities sitting there standing idle.
No, that feels. Any experience from the floor on this? Any view? I think what would be interesting really would be, what's the net increase-decrease in mobile shredding trucks in the UK, and how's that trending? So, I mean, I know a man here who will definitely have the answer to that. It's John. I mean, you guys are supplying more. We'll not shred it, but even if we wanted to buy a shredded truck, we wouldn't be able to buy one. So, Shredtech are supplying, I would imagine, 80% of the mobile shredding market every month.
Yeah. I see.
So, what's the net? Well, you know, if you look back over 2014, what do you think the net increase-decrease has been on mobiles? Or you don't have that intelligence?
It's a very difficult question to answer because we're going to the stage now where the earlier, if you like, the earlier mobile trucks, you know, Anthony is taking that pain as a company, but you know, the reintegration of new equipment, the new sizes have come over, etc. So it's probably a very difficult question to answer. To be fair, I could do you some figures for the next meeting. That would, you know, it wouldn't take a lot. But I think the point about one-man bands, I think that's a very valid point, that we don't see new entrants appearing, certainly in the mobile sector, because of the, you know, the cost of it.
Although as more of that second